Hello and welcome to the Fan Zone. I'm very excited to be joined. A lot of time when you hear dressage now and you hear the names down the start list, Mount St John is one that you hear a lot of. So I'm very pleased to be joined by founder, managing director of Mount St John Stud, Emma Blundell. Thank you so much for talking to us, because it is a name we hear so much now. So it's so nice to get a little bit of background, hear a little bit more about it. Obviously, freestyle has really brought the name into the forefront of the public who might not follow the dressage so much. But first of all, how on earth did you get into this? How on earth did it start? So many questions, but let's talk about your background and how you started it.
Yeah, so I started out at the local riding school close to us, and that slightly snowballed. And yeah, then when I was a teenager, then in the end we managed to move the horses, or the ponies at the time, home. And I was totally hooked on horses from being very young. My parents aren't riders, but it was just something I had as a passion from a very young child. And I was really lucky then that when I went to uni, I studied business management, and the plan was that I would always go and have a proper job. But in my head, it was always to do something with horses. And so I was very lucky then that I managed to persuade everyone that I could come up with a business plan that was horse related. And so I actually ended up doing a master's in entrepreneurship at Manchester Business School, which was a full foundation to the start of the business. And if I look back on the business plan now, it's very, very accurate to the business that's running and what started. So I really wanted to have a proper strategy for it. And whilst I was studying at Manchester then, fortunately at home we do have some land for grazing and where the cattle and the sheep are. And so I started in my first year actually to breed from a mare that I had that had a bit of time off. And we had one foal, but I didn't want one foal to grow up on its own. So I bought her a friend who was freestyle.
Amazing. Just that friend, just a small friend.
So freestyle I bought from Germany from an auction with 500 foals. And
how old was freestyle? Just a foal when you got her?
She was a foal. She was 4 months old at the time. And so we had to wait until she was ready to collect and wean from her mother. And then she came over to join the first foal that we bred for dressage that we still have today. She ended up not going into sport, but she's been an amazing broodmare for us and has some great offspring and grandchildren that have competed here as well. And so, yeah, both of them have been really successful. And then after that, that was the plan, that we continued to breed from the mother of the first foal we had. She actually had a grandchild that was second here in the 5-year-olds today, gold standard. So that was lovely. And yeah, then I continued to add foals that I bought mainly from Germany each year, so that they had a small group to grow together. So VIP, who I competed earlier this week in the Prix St George and the Inter One, she's also a horse that I bought as a foal. She's now 10, but I bought her in my second year of uni. And same with First in Fugger, who's doing well now with Izzy Lickley in the juniors. And yeah, I think for me that was a really clear strategy to continue breeding and then buying a couple of foals each year and then building up from that, really.
And so many questions, but first and foremost, you do compete as a rider, but then having that foresight to get other riders. Do you know what I mean? It'd be very easy to go, well, these are lovely horses, I'm just going to ride them, they're all mine. But you to get other riders to ride your horses, I saw that you had Izzy, who we had on the couch earlier, fantastic young talent, and to be giving them opportunities to ride these horses, but then also the likes of Charlotte, and I love the young horse classes here, and you always see a Mount St John horse there, but I have to talk a bit about freestyle. I fangirl her whenever I'm at the yard. Literally, I have so many selfies with that horse. It's unbelievable. What a fantastic horse. She's just the most amazing temperament. Just in the stable, she is extraordinary.
Yeah, no, I was very lucky. I think, to be honest, the whole story with freestyle, basically the first foal we had was I use potentially not the same stallion that I would choose to use on her mother now today, because I basically bred an elephant. And she was so spoiled because she was the first foal we had. She was a rude elephant. And so all I wanted was a nice, polite foal that stayed by the mother, that didn't spook at anything, that looked like it was going to be very uncomplicated to bring up to live with our slightly overspoiled first homebred. And it worked, to be honest, because she is adorable. She's always been very easy for everything. And to be honest, the plan initially was totally selfish for myself, and it was horses for myself to ride, with the plan that then I knew that I could have a small group growing up and have the business of selling a couple each year and keeping something behind for myself. But obviously what then developed was something that was way beyond both my riding capabilities and the scope of what one person could do anyway. So I did start freestyle, and the other horse, then we decided just to breed from the other one. And I competed freestyle at the Nationals as a 4-year-old myself.
Wow.
And that was great. I'd never been to the Nationals. I hadn't done dressage before. And she was amazing for that. But by the time she was sort of 5.5, I really realised that she had a lot more talent. I'd never done flying changes to teach a horse, and I thought she really needed to go to a professional. And so I asked Charlotte if she would have her, because I knew Charlotte from showing days, so I'd known her a long time, and in terms of dressage she was obviously the best placed person I could think of to ask an opinion. And so yeah, she took her for a month's trial, and I've never had her back.
She is mine now, I'm guessing. And what was Charlotte's initial reaction when she sat on her?
I think, yeah, she was a very confident horse. She's not fazed by anything, and she's always been very... she really tries for the rider. So anything you ask her, she would do. And I always describe her a bit like a Labrador of a horse. And so whether she was trained to be a police horse, whether she was trained to be a circus horse, or whether she was trained to be a dressage horse, she would do whatever she was trained and developed for, because she just wants to please. And she does have a lovely character in everything, and she's very trusting of the rider, and she's got no reason not to trust, because she's never had that broken, I think. And that's the nice thing when you've had something from such a young age, that you get to really know the character, and you know anything that they've had as a positive or negative experience to then help them through. But she's always, throughout her life, being confident with everything. So that was really nice, taking her to shows and everything to start her. She was never afraid. She was actually enjoyed an atmosphere. So that was something I enjoyed when I was riding her and competing with her, because she genuinely did want people there to watch. And that was a lovely feeling as a rider.
I'm going to hand over to Bobby, because I could genuinely fangirl about freestyle all day. And I know you don't have long, because you've got to watch one of your riders, Amy. So I'm going to pass over to Bobby, because I know she's got questions for you.
Thank you. So obviously, Emma, it proves that you have an amazingly good eye when it comes to looking at mares, looking at stallions, looking at foals. And I mean, your first foal you ever bought was freestyle. So let's just put that in perspective for a minute. That's pretty amazing. So what do you look at when you're looking at a mare to begin with? Is it more important that you have a good solid foundation in the mare before you even look for the stallion?
I think for me, what I look for is, I want good, correct conformation, and I want good base. But at the same point, I really look at how the horse uses itself when it moves. And I think I've seen a lot of very incorrect or quite ugly horses that as soon as you see them moving, they present themselves in a very different way. And at the end of the day, we're not breeding statues, we are breeding sport horses. And my aim and goal is not about any sort of show class or breed type. Actually, it is just for sport. And so what I really look for is how the horse uses itself, and then how it cooperates with the rider. And so obviously as a foal you can't see how it cooperates with the rider, but you can see how it operates with the handler, and they do inherit a lot from the parents. So if a mare is trickier to handle, then it generally would be through that line, and it would be quite consistently passed on, unless you use a very good rideable or easy character stallion. And so then a big part of my job as a breeder is to identify those strengths and weaknesses of the mare very quickly, and then find a stallion that matches or at least helps tackle some of the weaknesses. And so the main thing I would look for is the rideability, and then the proof both mentally and physically that something else through that family has actually sustained a career to a high level, because we're aiming for the Grand Prix, not for something that wins the 4-year-old, for example. So you might have something that's a lovely mover at 4, but actually when the horse is then asked to start sitting and doing the work, really doesn't either have the mental attitude to take the work or the physical capabilities to start taking the more intense workload. And that for freestyle was one of the big things, is that she just finds all of that so easy. So that would be the main things that I look for, yeah.
It's really important that they have a bit of a CV behind them, really.
Yeah,
so
I think
exactly.
so.
Yeah. So looking at the Olympics and looking at the Europeans, we can see that the way that the horses are going now, the sport's becoming a lot more modern, isn't it? Especially when you look at the top horses, there's only a small amount that are really excelling in that way. Is that changing the way you're looking at breeding into the future? Are you looking at different stallions going in now? Yeah,
definitely. I think the sport has evolved a lot in the last 10 years. I'm lucky because I've come into dressage quite late. So for me, I've probably followed the sport for around 15 years. And I think in the last 10, it's changed dramatically. And I love that, and I think that's critical. I think the scores that are being achieved now is totally different to 10 years ago. And we need to breed horses that can get over 80%, and they need to be able to get 80% at Grand Prix. And that takes a lot, and they have to be able to do that in a football stadium full of people. Yeah. And I think so we have to have horses that are able to switch on and off and really focus on the rider in intense circumstances. But I think even 5 or 6 years ago, you could get away with a weaker walk or not really being as strong in one of the phases. Now, if you do that, you're not in a place. However good the rider is, then they need a horse that has the capabilities in all the paces and in all of the movements to be competitive. Yeah.
So it really makes your job really quite critical, doesn't it, really? It's really quite a lot of pressure on you as well to make sure it's the right stallion, the right mare, going the right way.
Yeah, I think so. But that's a big part of what I enjoy, is the challenge of that. And I think as far as I'm concerned, the breeder's job is to make the rider's job as easy as possible. And obviously, there's different types of rider in every form, tall, small ones that like slow ones, fast ones, whatever. So I really try in my breeding to cover all bases, because I think what I would want to ride, what Charlotte wants to ride, and what every other rider wants is actually slightly different. And so that's important as well. And a big part of my job is then really matching the horse and rider, because I've seen it on numerous occasions, a very talented horse and a very talented rider that just don't match. And it's not a disaster, but it's just not a perfect match. And that same horse with a different rider and that same rider with a different horse is amazing. And I think that's one of the next stages, I think, for me with the business, is really exploring the different possibilities with lots of different riders, because I find that as much fun as trying lots of different bloodlines. And we've worked with Charlotte for a long time, and we will do for a long time to come. But obviously there's only 3 spots on the British team.
Exactly.
And but there is 3 spots on the British team, you know, so we are ambitious to fill as many of those spaces as we can.
And what a dream that would be, wouldn't it, to see 3 British bred horses on the
that would
on the
be
podium.
amazing.
It would be amazing. Yeah, and you're definitely going that way with the size of your place now. I think I saw on Facebook you've recently had an open day.
Yes.
How many mares and foals do you have at the moment?
Just stole my next question. That is what I wanted to know.
All day.
I wanted to know that as well. How big's the operation from these 2 foals that you got in?
So it's grown quite a bit. So yeah, back then, 10 years ago, then we had 1 foal that we bred, and I'd buy 1 or 2 a year. Obviously now, that was when I was a student full time. So now this is what we do, and the business plan was to have 20 to 25 foals a year. This year we bred 65, and 15 were sold before they were born as either pregnant brood mares or embryos, and then we had 50 foals born. So yeah, and then for next year at the moment we currently have 68 pregnancies. So it's around the same number, but we will again be auctioning and selling some of the brood mares and the embryos. And we're actually now doing, just next week, foal auction for some of the foals from this year. So we have 19 foals available, including from Fairy Tale, who was winning here, the Inter 2. And there's lots of different foals in the collection for that. But I think now it's the next stage of the business in the last couple of years, where it is a lot bigger than it was a couple of years ago. And it's finding new strategies, new techniques, especially with the whole situation from COVID. We were lucky to squeeze in an open day last week, which was quite full on and intense just before coming here. But we pulled that together in less than 2 weeks. And it was great to actually have people back and, do an event, which is normally something we run every year and takes normally months of preparation. But yeah, so it's been a busy few weeks.
And I think everyone listening to you now, how do they go about it if they wanted to come to the foal auction that you have? Is it online? Do they come to the yard? So
the auction's online. It's all shared on my social and on the website. And then everything's always on Facebook and Instagram now. That's the life we live.
Way, isn't it? Yeah.
Everything's instant, everything's quick, and I think it's great because for us, what was the biggest surprise, I would say, for me when I started the business? Well, one, it originally was for me to have a couple of nice horses to ride and to sell, but then I realised it was a bit more than that, and then I really felt like I was going to then bring the best bloodlines of the world to the Brits. And that's not quite how it worked out. And we've ended up actually now probably, I would say, 85-90% of our sales are overseas. And a lot of the horses are very international. And I actually really enjoy that now. I would love to sell more and have more here. But at the same point, the people that I've met and the opportunities I've had to visit places is phenomenal. And I love to travel, and I would say that would be my second passion after the horses. So to combine the two is just amazing.
And I think with Brexit a little bit, it's going to change. I think people are going to look more in England to buy now instead of so much abroad, which I actually think is brilliant. Being able to get more British breeding, more riders here on British bred horses.
Yeah, and I think something like an online auction is so transparent.
Yeah.
And for me, that's so important, is the information is there, the video, the pictures, people can still come and see them and do everything they could anyway, but it's just there and it's in your lap. It's literally so available, and you can be anywhere in the world or you can be, at home. It's fine.
Dangerous on your bank balance as well. I can imagine dangerous.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And I know you've got to go because Amy Woodhead's about to compete, and I know you need to watch her. But you've done this a few years now. Looking back at that student who started out, what bit of advice would you go back and give her, if any?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Thanks.
What bit of advice?
What have you learned on this journey?
I think for me, it is trust your gut, because I've had to do that on a few occasions. And if you disagree with somebody that is even well respected in their field, if you believe it enough, that's sufficient. And I also think have good people around that not only encourage you and allow you to be creative and flexible in what you're doing, but also encourage you to do what you want within the scope of what's possible, and pushing boundaries and trying different things and being realistic at the same time, which is a really hard combination to achieve. But if you don't try things that go wrong, you don't learn from it. So for me, when I'm breeding, I'll make mistakes all the time, but as long as you learn from it, then you'll breed a better foal next year, and that's fine. And then you just have to be realistic, and somebody gets lucky and gets something that's slightly less expensive. But I think for me, it could be a mistake because I just think, the neck's not quite perfect how I want it, but it can still be a super horse. And so I think that's the thing, is to just keep learning, to keep educating yourself, and to have good people to learn from. Because at the end of the day, you're only as good as the knowledge you put in. And if you take in the wrong knowledge, then you're misinformed. So it's learning from people that you do really respect and that are you know, sort of more, obviously a lot more experienced than you are, and just keep continuing to educate.
Being open to learn and listening. And I just love what you said about different horses and different riders, and having the guts to go, do you know what? That horse is going to suit someone else, and having that, can trust your instincts, isn't it? And not just being belligerent and being, no, and horses, not sometimes round peg, square hole type situation. And actually, I love that. I love the fact that you're open to so many different riders. And
I think it's hard for some of the riders. You know, some riders are brought up that they should just get on with everything.
Yeah.
There's two schools. There's some that are so like, just get on with everything, just make do. But they're always then, to some extent, yes, you might have to when you start out in business, you know, if you're a young person, and that's what's offered. But I think then as you develop, then it's a lovely opportunity then to be able to define who you are as a rider, and what does fit you absolutely the best. And I think Amy Woodhead, for example, is a great example for that, because she's come from a very horsey family. She's ridden everything all her life. She's worked at Carl's, and obviously would have ridden all of the horses there. But now she's really shaping her career, and she's now at the stage where she has sufficient business and clients that she can start to be more selective of what actually fits her the best.
And then she can rock it with her career, because if you're riding so many different things and pushing yourself in so many different ways, actually, if she can focus on horses she loves and the way that suits her, that's only going to improve her riding and her results.
I think so. And I think for me, that's another thing that I really enjoy, is working with talented riders like Amy and helping them actually realise and have that confidence for themselves. Because she is super talented and she's very hardworking and committed to what she does, and it's a great partnership that we have. You know, she was winning here this week already, and she had 2 rides through to the 5-year-olds, and she put Jenny, her assistant rider, on one of the 5-year-olds for today, who ended up second, because that was the right one for Jenny to take in the ring. That was a higher placed horse to go into the championship, so Amy in a way could have said, no, that's the one I'm going to take, but she knew the other one needed a little bit more handheld and needed the confidence from her. So I think that just shows who she is as a person as well. And so no, I have to say it's been a dream working with her, and she's the one that encouraged me to ride VIP and has helped me through that as well. But that's what a partnership is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you need to go and support her.
Yes.
So I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. Okay. And thank you for bringing freestyle into our lives, because I love that horse so much. I cannot tell you how much. But you are doing so much for British breeding and supporting riders. Thank you so much. It's wonderful. And I have a feeling we're going to be seeing quite a few Mount St John horses on those teams in the future. But thank you so much. And keep doing what you're doing, because it's extraordinary. Thank you very much for talking to us, Emma.
Thanks.